Do you suck at finding owls?
Have you spent days, weeks, or even months searching for owls, only to come back home with photos of trees that kind of look like owls, a herniated disc, and a broken sense of pride?
Well, if this is the case for you, then we are in the exact same boat, because in the first 4.5 years that I've been doing bird photography, I've only managed to come across 2 owls, and that's not for lack of trying. Now, in my first video that I came out with on how to find owls, I was unsuccessful in all of my attempts. However, this year is going to be different. We are finding an owl, and I also hope to bring in more information into this video and make it more of a step-by-step guide that'll help you find your way to an owl as well. So in Pennsylvania, we have 9 species of owls, those being the northern saw-whet owl, the northern hawk owl, the great-horned owl, the barred owl, the barn owl, the eastern screech owl, the snowy owl, the short-eared owl, and the long-eared owl. Now, the best time for viewing owls is the winter, so that just so happens to be the same time that nothing else really is going on as far as birds. So it's pretty barren, and you're not going to hear a lot or see a lot anyways, so you might as well go owling. Winter is also a great time to go owling because there's a lot more visibility. There's no leaves on the trees, and so it allows you to see owls a little bit easier. Also, some species of owls are breeding and mapping out different territories during the winter, so they are actually going to be vocalizing a lot more, which also makes them easier to find. Which leads me into step 1 of finding owls, which is research and information. Now, I've compiled a list of what information you probably want to get before going out and searching for these owls, just because it'll give you a leg up when you finally decide to go and try to find them. So going through the first species that I'm going after this year, just really quick, I'm gonna go through the list for the snowy owl. So plumage, just know what the bird looks like, essentially, know what it looks like in flight, know what it looks like far away, close up. Snowy owls are obviously white. The females differ a little bit. They have a little bit more black barring, and that is due to needing more camouflage, probably while on the nest. 2, habitat and migration. This is obviously important for knowing where the bird's gonna be at specific times of the year. Snowy owls normally are found up north, further in the Arctic tundra, but every 3 to 5 years they have something called eruption years, and that's when they show up in places that they don't normally show up due to either a lack of food or an overabundance of population that year. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. If you have an overabundance of hatchlings or nestlings that year, then there's going to be more competition for food. So 3 is time active. So are they diurnal? Are they nocturnal? Are they crepuscular? Snowy owls are diurnal, and that makes them a little bit of an outlier as far as owls go. So they're most active during the day. 4, diet. Voles, rodents, and other birds is what their diet is. Sometimes you can find specific species of birds just based off going after and trying to find the species or the animals that they eat or the insects that they eat or whatever. So 5, signs of agitation. This is probably the most important, and this goes for a lot of species of owls, not just the snowy owl, so you might want to take some extra notes on this part. So signs of agitation: hooting, hissing, whistling, or bill snapping. Now these are all vocalizations that an owl will make to show you that it doesn't want you in the area or that it is its territory and, you know, you are invading it essentially. Other signs of agitation include defensive posturing. So if the bird fluffs up, if it has its wings kind of held out away from its body, if it has constricted pupils. So if you're close enough to see its pupils, more than likely you're probably a little bit too close anyways. But other signs include the owl fidgeting, bobbing its head, changing position, or the owl might dive or strike at an intruder, which is you are definitely too far into its territory if that happens. But it's also a good time to mention, never use flash for owls. This is a big no-no for owl photography. It can be extremely damaging to their eyes, as most owl species are extremely sensitive to light. So after compiling this information, then what do? How do you find the location of the bird? And that is step number 2, which is obviously locating the bird. In order to do this, what I do is I'll use that information I just acquired, and I'll go into eBird, and I'll try to find specific areas or environments that it would seem like this bird would show up in. So upon my research, I found that they like open areas, they like shorelines to show up on during eruption years sometimes. And so I decided to search for a place with shorelines in Pennsylvania, and one of the only places is Erie, and it just so happened that there was a snowy owl in that area. Is this going to happen every time? No, you gotta search around sometimes, and you gotta really do the back end work in order for it to work out when you're actually in the field. So also, I do have to mention there are some species, especially when it comes to owls, but there are some species of birds that aren't reportable on eBird. This is probably due to having a protection on them of some sort. And species like long-eared owls, they're not going to be reportable on eBird. In this case, the snowy owl was. So upon showing up, sometimes you're just going to have the general area that the owl was in, and how do you find it from there? So basically, I knew I wasn't going to waste that trip, and I knew the only other thing that I could probably do to find this bird now that I was up in the area was to ask other people. So I found another person up there that was also looking for the snowy owl. We kind of teamed up and did a little detective work, and luckily enough, we found somebody with a spotting scope, and that's pretty much a good indication that you're talking to the right person. So he was able to point us out towards the peninsula, which was like a 1.5 mile walk extra for us to do. So once we got there, there were a couple wooden outlook post places that we climbed up and started scanning around for the bird, and we did this for probably 25 minutes before we just could not find the owl. But luckily a silhouette emerged from the woods behind us, and a man by the name of Joe Susi was able to point the owl out for us. So after that, we tried to approach the owl a little bit, but we didn't want to push our luck at all. It was super windy. You could tell the owl was already agitated just from kind of the weather that was going on. So we got in there, and once the owl started to move around, the closer that we got, we decided to just hike it out of there. And I feel like we did the right thing, and even though I didn't get the best photos or videos of the bird, I felt good coming out of there. So just like that, we got the snowy owl checked off the life list, but the journey up there was not yet through. The same person that managed to point out the snowy owl to us actually offered to show us a eastern screech owl location that was literally like 1.5 miles to 2 miles down the road. I also was not expecting to see this eastern screech owl because at this point it was the middle of the day, and I figured that it was, hiding out down in its cavity at this point. But surely enough, we drove up 2 miles and it was poking its head out, and just like that, my owlless streak had been broken by 2 owls in one day. So eastern screech owls are nocturnal, and they primarily nest in tree cavities. They also come in 3 flavors, which is chocolate, the brown morph, strawberry, the rufous morph, and cookies and cream, which is the gray morph. And it's kind of fun and cool because whenever you see a eastern screech owl reported, it's not necessarily always reported with what it is, so you're kind of in for a surprise whenever you go and try to find them. But the brown morphs are really more localized down to south kind of Florida area, but the red and the gray morphs you can find around here in Pennsylvania as well. So with both the snowy owl and the eastern screech owl now checked off the list, I figured it'd be a good time to go over the next step in how to find owls, which is owling. And even though I didn't have to go owling for the first 2 species that I got, it is one of the most vital, if not the most vital thing you can do when trying to locate owls. So what is owling exactly? Well, owling is exactly what I'm doing. It is going out at dusk or at night and just listening for the calls of owls. And while we're on the subject of calls of owls, I know I have to bring this up because it's such a controversial topic when it comes to owls, but a big question that I've gotten before is, do you call owls in order to find them? The answer to that is unequivocally no. I do not personally call owls in order to find them, and that should be obvious with how many owls I've got up to this point. However, there are those people out there that are going to go out and call owls no matter what, and so I wanted to just kind of educate people around maybe what ethically calling would look like, kind of what they do whenever they're out to search for owls in order to do studies on them and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're going to call an owl, keep in mind this is not hunting. You are not calling the owl to call it into you. You are calling the owl in order to get a response back so that you can hear the location of the owl. So I would say after you call one time, if there's no call back within the area, then just stop calling altogether. There's probably not an owl in the area. Owls are extremely territorial animals, and so you should get a call back if one is within, the range that you are calling in. Do I necessarily advise this? No. Do I look down upon it? Not really, just as long as you're doing it in a smart and ethical way that isn't disrupting the birds too much. I managed to track down an eastern screech owl this morning. Well, I wouldn't say track down, but I managed to hear an eastern screech owl, and I know the general direction of where it was calling from. So now the plan is to basically go around that area, look for signs of a cavity that it might be roosting in or nesting in or just taking shelter in, and go from there. So after you go owling and you hear an owl, what are the next steps in finding the owl? Well, you're going to look for any sign of the owl that you can. So in this case, with an eastern screech owl, I was looking for cavities, pretty much every single cavity that I could. I was also looking for pellets, so that's what they regurgitate. It's bones and fur of their prey that they regurgitate. The third thing you need to be looking for is whitewash. So this is essentially just owl shit. That is, you know, usually it'll line the tree or it'll cover a good portion of the tree next to where the cavity is in the case of eastern screech owls. Another thing that you might want to look for is signs of crows or ravens mobbing a bird. So if you're hearing a flock of crows or ravens and they're going crazy, chances are it might be an owl. Usually it's a bigger owl, like a great horned owl, but sometimes it can also just be any bird of prey. So you're kind of flipping the coin with that, but that is an additional way of, you know, finding signs of owls. Now, after I got confirmation that the owl was in the area through owling and hearing it call, over the next 4 days, I didn't manage at all to locate the owl. So I looked for every sign that I could and couldn't locate it. So that brings me to the next tip, which is knowing when to quit, because I was trampling around this owl's territory for 4 days straight, and it probably, you know, might not have disturbed the owl that much at all, but there is a chance that that owl, you know, got somewhat disturbed by me doing that. So moving on to another owl and having a better probability or a better chance at finding another owl is probably the best thing to do in that kind of situation. So with that, I moved on to another species, which was the short-eared owl, and I got the location from another photographer that I had known in the area for the past 2 years. His name is Abdul Aziz, and he is an amazing person and an amazing photographer, so go check out his page. But I got a location for the short-eared owls from him, and he was even up there the first day that I was as well. All right, and here we are at the short-eared owl location. As you can see, it is a prairie-ish field, very open area for them to ground nest in. And they are crepuscular, so that basically means they're gonna come out to hunt right before it gets dark. Apparently, they come out a little bit earlier on days that it's overcast, so I'm gonna set up here. This is my second day here. The first day, I got some great footage. I will show that footage soon, but I think we have possibly some action over here, so we're gonna get started. A couple tips of finding them if you don't have a location. Look for areas that have northern harriers hunting. And in this location, we got not 1, but 4 short-eared owls, which was an amazing experience. And I'm just so glad that I got to witness that. They were all out hunting and fighting harriers and everything else. And it was just a super cool experience. So with that, I got 3 species of owls this year, which is, you know, far above and beyond what I thought I'd imagine I'd be getting, but I'm going to go after 1 more species, which is the great horned owl, and it is probably the most iconic owl that there is. Okay, so I got to the location that the great horned owl was spotted at and nesting at, and I had walked into the path looking up into the trees for the nest, and I came across one of the great horned owls, which was literally almost right above me. So I tried to set up my tripod as fast as I could, and luckily the owl was patient enough to let me do that and then proceeded to do its own thing. All in all, check the great horned owl off the list. I got one. Super happy to get out here and be able to see them and be able to hear one calling to another one. That was super cool. I hope I got that on the GoPro, but. So all in all, coming out of this year, I got 4 species of owls, which was amazing compared to last year. And I think more than anything, and this is the #1 tip that I could give anybody, be a part of the community. Join bird groups, go out and talk to people while you're on trails. You have similar interests already. I don't know if you know that, but if you're out on a trail with somebody, you already have similar interests. So it wouldn't hurt to ask them what they know about birds, if they've seen any birds in the area, and just make connections that way. Because like what happened to me, you never know if the person you're talking to in that moment is going to send you to owl locations 2 years down the road. So it's always good to have connections within the birding community, and that seems to be the thing that helps the most and continues to help the most when it comes to finding rare species of birds or finding birds that you may not have known were in the area whatsoever. And just talking around with some people, you get to find this information out on your own. So thank you for watching. As a reminder, there are bird shirts and prints available on my website. And also be sure to like and subscribe to support the channel. I have a podcast episode coming out with Michael Kensinger on this same subject, so be sure to subscribe to be notified when that comes out. And I will also come out with a video more on the specifics of how to exactly photograph owls. So once again, thank you for watching and stay birding.